Everything is okay on the island nation of Tonga, which is next to Fiji and American Samoa, on January 14th at 7:50 p.m. until it looks like a nuclear detonation. But it is the local volcano erupting, and it surprised everyone. It's pretty incredible. The time lapse. Look at the shockwave. I'm going to rewind. It's just incredible. Watch it right around the outer ring. Just wow. Can't even describe that. A lot of this is moisture from vaporizing water. So this generated an instantaneous tsunami, and it struck Tonga, Fiji. The people of Fiji heard this eruption and sounded like cannons, and it kept going and kept going. I immediately jumped into a chat room for Agenda Free TV, and then later Volcanoverse and YouTube Volcano Watch. And the Fijians were reporting that for more than an hour they heard the report of cannons, kind of a sound going on. If you go to windy.com and you look at the region, go to the 12-hour lapse of satellite view. Here's what it looks like on the blue spectrum. And there's visible and infrared too. And it's just absolutely insane. And if you do the visible, this one's even more impressive because it's, I mean, night falls pretty quickly. Here's the sunlight. And it's just, wow. We can zoom in. That's their capital. I think it's Nuku'alofa. I cannot pronounce that. I'm sorry. If you go to infrared, the amount of heat and moisture from vaporizing seawater is just incredible. It's larger than the tropical storms that are forming nearby. If you zoom out, you get a sense of the immense scale right here, because there's Australia. Over there is Australia. And it's like the size of one of the smaller Australian states, like where Sydney's at. And this is Australia. This is the size of the heat, the ash cloud, and some of the gases. Just unreal. I've been monitoring the situation since it about happened. 2 in the morning, roughly, I think is when I became aware of this. And I apologize, friends, for not going live when I first returned home from California. I've been sick. It was a brutal drive home. I still have a sore throat illness that's getting better every day, but I can't speak. Not for a live broadcast. If the tsunami situation worsens, I will, of course, go live. I wanted to reassure everyone right now that even as we speak, Oregon and Washington, California's northern portion is probably being splashed by the tsunami. It may have just occurred. This is ndbc.noaa.gov. This is the National Data Buoy Center. N as in Nancy, D as in Delta, B as in Boyd, C as in Charlie, .NOAA.gov. NOAA, National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration. They are the gods of weather. They are the utmost trusted, much more than local weather stations or any other source. So fishermen and all the sea captains out there that trust their lives to NOAA, and you should too. Now, if you click over here on the Pacific, all the diamonds here that are going off are where tsunami waves have registered in the last 8 hours. And I was trying to make this video about 35 minutes ago. And my voice hacked and coughed and ruined it. But I was just in the middle of saying that the tsunami did not reach Oregon, Washington, and BC when these all lit up. And that was roughly 35 to 40 minutes ago. 9:07 a.m. is what it is as I'm recording. So I'm like, shut my mouth. It finally arrived. The tsunamis travel about 500 miles an hour on the deep sea, like in the open ocean. So that's the speed of a passenger jet. So it will always reach Hawaii. A Tonga tsunami will always reach Hawaii first, and then you've got several hours still, 4, depending, 5, 6, before it hits the west coast of the United States. So many hours had gone by that I figured out it's not going to happen. And shut my mouth, it did right there. So if you want to read the BUOY data, you can click on it and view event details. And that they're hard to read, but when you go to event details, it'll say the buoy's depth and water column heights, blah, blah, blah. So the actual buoy's depth, or excuse me, sorry, buoy's depth, it's at the surface, but the water depth, 4,328 meters for this guy, and that's what they look like. They're really cute. So the timestamp here, 14 GMT. How long ago was that? When is 14 GMT in Pacific? We're on Pacific time here. So 6 a.m. That's when it registered off the coast. So this already occurred, and the tsunami waves, if they hit the Oregon coast, already happened. Maybe I just didn't look at the page soon enough. So the event details can also tell you the height, and so just spoiler alert and skipping ahead to everything. What you do is, excuse me, let me go back to our page. You look at the normal height of the depths of the water, and then you look at this. Now remember, tsunamis are not high out at sea, though the wave height increases once it reaches land. So this is still out in extremely deep water, but it'll be like a small speed bump kind of a sized wave out at sea, but it's going, 500 miles an hour, and then it will curl and rise as it reaches the shallow water inland. What happened? What caused the tsunami? What's going on with the eruption? That I can tell you what everybody knows, which isn't much, so it shouldn't take long. Tonga was going dormant. It's been erupting throughout December and prior to this. It's not the name of the volcano. The island nation is Tonga, but it's so hard to pronounce. But people generally call it the volcano at Tonga. And there's Fiji. So what was happening is it was just erupting in pretty minor fashion, and then there were some larger explosions. 3 days ago, where cold seawater met hot gases, and then boom, that created a steam explosion. And so that's probably what just happened with what happened last night, around midnight Pacific or whenever this occurred. I became aware of it around 2 in the morning. And, it was 6 in the morning that it finally reached the buoys off of the coast of California and Oregon. So I first saw them go and strike Hawaii, and then the buoys lit up over by Saipan. They eventually went to Japan a couple hours later. Hit west coast of Australia. Fiji incredibly heard the sound of the eruption. It's not that incredible, but people think that it is. With an explosion that large, yeah, of course you could hear it from Fiji. The people were nearly deafened who posted videos. They first heard the sounds of eruption, which sounds like cannon fire, like cannons going off in a distance. I mean, that's the way they described Krakatoa. That's the way volcanoes sound. And so they went outside curious to the beach, in the video, which I can't show you. It's a copyright thing. And then the boom, deafening shockwave struck. And people shouted, screamed, and ran because they were wise, not because they were fearful. I mean, I'm sure they felt fear too, but everybody in the Pacific knows that if you see an eruption of a volcano near you, you don't wait for confirmation of a tsunami. They travel 500 miles an hour. Any sort of seismic or explosive or volcanic activity that boom happens, you just get away from the shoreline. You go to the shelter places and you go now. And everybody learned that again in 2011, 2004, etc. The um, size of that initial tsunami we knew was pretty small. It wasn't big on the quote Richter scale, even though it's not the Richter scale. We soon got some images that came uploaded out of Tonga before all communication was lost with the island, as far as like the media and everybody making phone calls. You can't. People who were trying to reach loved ones on Tonga um, couldn't reach them. They reported in the live streams where I was participating in chat. So it could have been power outage, or the undersea cables for the internet could have been severed, or a mix of both. The tsunami was several feet deep, went inside of a church, went into neighborhoods and buildings. That person may have uploaded from a satellite phone. It's unknown, but that's one of the few things that would work. The ash cloud, I don't know if that interferes with a satellite phone, but I imagine a lot of people who have boats have satellite phones, since cell phones don't work at sea. But since then, there's been very few like videos, reports. The government's not even issuing statements on their website because it's not functional right now. So we don't know much about what happened. We know it was not a magmatic eruption. I had that confirmed with the geology experts on some of the live streams. Those give you a warning. Those types of eruptions where there's lava, magmatic, coming into the chamber, that's called harmonic tremor. It's like it sings in a frequency we can't hear, but the instruments do. And that's followed by earthquake swarms, and it's what they sound like. None of that happened. So this is not your traditional, magma came to the surface and there was an eruption. This is an explosion that seems to have started possibly an eruption. Now, seawater is very cold. The hot gases are superheated inside of a volcano, and as they're escaping out the crater, if a minor earthquake occurs, that could cause a crack where seawater rushes in and it instantly explodes, because it's like heating up a burner on a stove to red hot. What do you think would happen if you put cold water and just splashed it on there? You'd get an explosion of steam into your face and you'd be burned. It would just bang. It would blow up. So that type of explosion happened recently on Tonga within 24 to 48 hours ago. This may have been a repeat on a much larger scale. That makes the most sense. I'm going to put this into SO2 mode, which is sulfur dioxide. SO2. It even has a volcano there. And never mind the fact that the SO2 is a weird squiggle pattern. It would be round like the ash. However, this tropical storm has pulled the gases over here with the wind, because it's rotating around. So this is all sulfur dioxide. You can see Vanuatu has its own volcanoes. They're always venting it over here, but this deep red is just happened from the eruption. So I would like to rewind it further than this, but it doesn't look like I can. It would have been nice to go back further and see when this occurred. So CO2 concentration, there hasn't been that much visible, probably because of the wind just churning around here. Sulfur dioxide has got much more of a registration, as far as these satellites are concerned. And that's a massive amount. So sulfur dioxide are small particles like in diesel exhaust, because there's a little bit of sulfur in diesel fuel. They make pretty sunsets. They reflect the sun. That's why California has sunsets. So many diesel trucks and things. Coal plants create it, and they reflect sunlight back into space. They're kind of like a global cooling kind of a deal, but they create asthma and acid rain because it's sulfur. Sulfur is acidic. So all of the rain that'll come down through the atmosphere right there will be acid rain. It's not a good thing. It's a serious pollutant, and that's a massive amount. It's off the scale. It only goes to 100, and it's probably denser than that, but that's the scale we have. So the bottom line is that the Oregon coast, California coast, probably only saw several inches, maybe a foot or two of tsunami rise. Do we have to fear, a tsunami induced sea level rise as the waves hit, at 6 in the morning? Do we have to fear anything else? Well, we may have to fear something worse. It's a slight possibility, though, that it might happen. It's rare as events go, but nobody knows what the likeliness of this occurring would be because nobody's there looking at it. It's too dangerous to approach, and landslide prediction is not very good. If you go to GeologyHub YouTube, he's awesome at explaining with authority, with expert knowledge. Ironically, he made a video right before this occurred where he was worried about a tsunami generated by a crater collapse of the volcano. So the Tonga's volcano, we just try to get images of it, and it sort of looks like this. I mean, it changes from moment to moment as the volcano's erupting. So if the wall of a crater collapses, all of this earth goes into the sea. And the height of a tsunami wave is worse. It is worse um, than a seismically generated tsunami. If you think of the coral height, like the actual as it's rolling into the beach, seismic waves, those caused by an earthquake underwater, have, because of the laws of physics, have about a wave curling height maximum of 100 feet, and that's incredibly rare. Like even through the thousands of years of time. A landslide falling into water, that type of tsunami, a splash type, there's no limit really to the height except for the volume of water displaced. So the more amount of land that slides in and splashes, the higher the wave would be, and it would be like one single wave just traveling. Valdez, Alaska in 1964 had a cliff collapse after the 9 plus something earthquake that struck Anchorage. And that tsunami from the splash picked up a freighter ship and dumped it on top of the town. And the wave was 167 feet tall, and it just raced across the bay as the cliff collapsed, splashed in there. The wave took out the town, and it was just absolutely devastating. They had to relocate, rebuild in a different spot, and the town was just erased off the map, basically. Just unbelievable horror in that situation. But that's the one that stands out the most in the last, 70 years? You think about it. There was a 1975 landslide off of Hawaii that caused a splash-type tsunami. So they do happen, but the massive type with 100-foot curling waves is extremely rare. And this volcano is not very tall. However, you have to remember that it's like we're seeing the tip of a very tall mountain underneath the sea. So how much of the crater collapses underwater? That can create kind of a strange hybrid of a tsunami where there's movement underneath the water plus a splash from the top. And who knows how devastating that would be, or how tall, or what. That would be the worst case scenario. Does it happen very often? Not really, no. but we don't know if it can or not. So that is what the possibility of a threat is now. The locals they face worse threats, and I'm talking about the threat to the Pacific in general as far as the tsunami goes. The locals have other threats to worry about that are worse. Sorry, not worse, but they are more likely to happen, and they're only local threats, such as pyroclastic flows. Those can go across water. Toxic gases can travel to communities and really injure people's lungs. I mean, the United Kingdom once had fatalities in the 1600s, I think it was, because of Iceland making toxic gases. They have water issues, power, just the localized flooding from the tsunami that already struck. That who knows what's happened to their boats and fleets. All of that is local hazards that we don't know what's happening down there. Volcanoes, of course, can also throw boulders at incredible distances. The person who was on the shoreline pretty close to the volcano, at the capital, little raining rocks rained down on him, and you could hear it like hail. And that was pieces of debris from the explosion, pieces of rock. So all of that is what they face locally, and so hopefully everybody's okay. Everybody's saying on the news no reports of fatalities or injuries yet, but we're not hearing anything out of the island, so that remains to be seen. I will go live if there's a second tsunami wave. If I'm awake, I'll probably be crashing here pretty soon since I've been awake all night looking at the situation. Because there's a lot that I can tell people about tsunami and volcano survival. I mean, the people of the South Pacific already know. I probably cannot tell them about anything, but if you're in the United States or anywhere else right now, don't get in the Pacific because the rip currents are going to be generated that are invisible. That's the biggest threat to North America anywhere. People think, well, who's in the water right now in North America? It's surfing season, actually. It's body surfing season. It's abalone, I think, season. Because the Pacific actually has warmer water off the coast of California, Oregon, Washington, and BC during the winter. That's because the current's coming from the Mexico area. Now, in summertime, the Pacific is colder because it's coming from Alaska. So there's a lot of people who probably wanted to go surfing and bodyboarding and tide pool checking out today. So don't do that. Don't wander. If you visit the beach, don't wander away from an area where you could quickly evacuate. And keep checking your cell phone for tsunami warnings. But the best course of action would just be staying away from the shoreline. That's just the wisest thing to do, because you might just get distracted, start walking down the beach, and be an hour's walk back towards your car or higher ground and away from any tsunami sirens, and forget that there is the ever-present danger today of this constantly erupting volcano, of it generating a worse tsunami than already happened at 6 in the morning. So the advisories are still going. Every time they expire, they're being renewed. This has been going on since like 2 in the morning. So the FEMA app, I would suggest put it on your phone, and wherever you're going by the coast, put an alert there. Make sure tsunami is checked. That would be a good idea. Yeah, just check everything for ocean hazards that way. And do not enter the water. The rip currents will get you. You can't see them. If you are taken out to sea by a rip current, don't fight it. Don't be swimming towards shore. You'll exhaust yourself. Let it take you out. Just don't panic. Just float. It loses its steam after a while, and then swim parallel to the shore. Just pick a direction, north or south, You'll get away from the rip current, and you'll have an easy time riding the waves back to shore. That's the way to survive. You will drown if you fight the rip current and struggle in a panic. That's the way that you die. So stay safe out there, and we'll see what this situation brings. If there's something new, I will go live to cover it, but my throat is in no condition to speak for hours on end like I usually do. So sorry I haven't been live since I've been back. It was a brutal trip home, and my strep throat situation is improving every day. If it is strep throat, it could be something else. But it just takes a long time to get rid of all the stuff, you know. It's just a longer illness. So I will be back when I feel better, and stay safe, everybody.